Good evening. I'm Carol Burr with the League of Women Voters, and tonight we'll be hearing from candidates for the California Assembly District 3 in the U.S. Congress. The League is a nonpartisan political organization that cares deeply about empowering voters. Candidate forums such as these are important tools to help you be an informed voter. We also encourage you to visit votersedge.org to receive in-depth information about the candidates and the issues on your ballot. We believe it's an honor to serve in public office, and we commend each of the candidates for running for office and also for agreeing to this virtual format tonight. This format is being broadcast in two formats: Zoom, webinar, and YouTube video. The links are posted on the LWVBcounty.org and our Facebook page, and will be available for viewing within the next day or two. We also thank our local North State Public Radio for their live broadcast of this forum. These videos are the property of the League of Women Voters and may not be used without the express permission of the League. Any showing of the video must be the whole video without editing, and we are not responsible for the content of any recording that is not arranged for or agreed to by the League. So tonight's format gives you each 2 minutes, 2 minutes for an opening, 2 minutes to answer each question, and a 2-minute closing. A coin toss, as you know, was used to establish the order of speaking. And the first to be open will be the last one to speak for this forum. So we will begin with Mr. Zink for an opening statement.
Well, thank you very much. I wish to say big thanks to the League of Women Voters for making tonight possible. Thank you. What you do matters to our democracy. And Assemblyman Gallagher, thank you for coming tonight. It's good to be here with you. My name is David Leon Zink. I live up here in Magalia with my wife, Lori. My people go back in Butte County to 1860, and I've lived here my whole life. In 2018, the Camp Fire destroyed my home, my neighborhood, and the town that I live in. 2 years later, the Bear Fire destroyed the homes my parents built and my grandparents built. And so we've lived with our communities through some hard times. And the reason I mention that is to say thank you to the people of District 3 for having our backs. You received us, welcomed us into your homes, you helped us stabilize, and you've been behind us as we've been working to rebuild our communities. I'm so thankful. As I've been campaigning around the district, folks have been telling me about concerns about another wildfire. They're concerned about how far it's going to go and how much it'll destroy. The wildfire of hyperpartisanship. And the reason that I'm running is to tamp down those flames. You know, we have a culture of grievance politics right now that are pushing us apart from the trust and respect that are inherent in our social contract, we the people. I'm running as a reasonable, patriotic candidate that wants to bring our communities together instead of drive them apart, and seek solutions that are going to work for our great district. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Mr. Gallagher.
Well, good evening, and it's great to be with you. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for putting on another one of these forums. My name is James Gallagher, and it's an honor to represent the 3rd District in the California State Assembly. I'm a father, a farmer, and I'm also an assembly member who is very proud to be a champion for our values and our way of life in this North State that is so often overlooked. And so, as you know, since the day that I took this office, and I take that oath and that honor very seriously, I have tried to be a very strong voice for our communities. And I'm proud of the work that we've done. You know, myself and my staff and the people of this district, we've come together through some very tough times. You know, we've been through the Oroville Dam travesty, the Camp Fire, COVID-19. And I'm proud of the way that we came together and rose from those things, rose to those, you know, those terrible times, and And the story of the North State is that we meet those challenges, and we rise to those challenges. And I was proud to stand alongside so many local officials, community members. My heart goes out to victims just like Mr. Zink, who've lost their homes. And a big reason of that is because of the failure of this state to invest in fuel reduction and forestry management. And I've been a big champion of that. In the last 2 budget cycles, we've gotten record investments in those things. And I've been able to really fight for those things and get them done. And so I've also been an effective legislator. I've had 50 bills signed into law since I've been in the state legislature. So even though I'm in the minority party, I find ways to get things done, to get things accomplished. I'm a champion for our water rights and building Sites Reservoir, which absolutely needs to happen. And we're moving those things along. I'd be honored to, again, serve this great district in the state legislature.
Thank you. For the first question, Mr. Gallagher, you'll be the first to answer. What are the top 2 issues facing our district, and how do you propose that the assembly tackle them?
I would say, as I was mentioning earlier, wildfire and fuels reduction to truly stop these fires. If you truly care about climate change, you need to get in our forests. And I've been saying that. We need to make investments in fuels reduction. That is the #1 cause of these fires. Wherever that spark comes from a lightning strike, from a power line, if it falls on this tinderbox of fuels, it's going to cause catastrophic fire. And for years, the radical environmentalists that control the Democratic Party in Sacramento have thwarted every opportunity, every proposal to get in there and do that. They've thrown up roadblocks to do it. At the federal level, that has happened as well. And so we need to change that. I've drafted legislation that the Democratic chairman of the committee wouldn't even hear. This is how far we've come. I mean, we've gone so far to the left in this state. They wouldn't even hear a bill that would streamline CEQA for these wildfire prevention projects. So that's the #1 issue, and we got to get on top of it. We have, through my advocacy and others, we have gotten record investment there and funding, but we need to get the job done by removing the bureaucracy so that we can increase the pace and scale. And then the second one would be cost of living. I mean, it is amazing what we've seen in this state, the rising cost of gas, of groceries, of everything. And a lot of it is because of the policy that has come out of the majority party in this state. Whether it's your utility bills, your gas prices at the pump, the cost of housing, all of those things have increased because of policies that have come out of Sacramento, policies that I have vehemently opposed and that I've fought against, and I've tried to find bipartisan alliances to do so. But the reality is we need a change in the viewpoints and the perspectives that go to Sacramento, and really work to change these policies that have driven up your cost of living, that continue to take away our livelihoods.
Thank you. Mr. Zink?
Yes, thank you. Well, so I have, of course, a long list of issues that are our priorities. Choosing 2 can be difficult. If you need to see more, please check out my website, zinkforassembly.com. But along with the issues Mr. Gallagher mentioned, I'm quite concerned about a national one that's impinging on local races right now. And that's, of course, the overturn of Roe v. Wade last June. We hear from folks that are opposed to women's reproductive choice that we shouldn't worry about electing them to office because, after all, our laws here in the state of California are among the most robust when it comes to protecting a woman's right to choose. And I'll fight to protect those rights because I'm a prayerfully pro-choice person. And yet, we've seen what happens when just trust me is the message. At the national level, we've seen just trust me not work so well. I think it's important for us to stay focused on protecting a woman's full citizenship and the right to choose. It's her body. We need to protect that choice. Secondly, when inflation is in the room, I can't help but think about the other side of the equation, helping our hardworking families keep more of the money that they've earned. And that's why single-payer healthcare is such an important issue for me. Looking at the numbers, single-payer healthcare will help more families keep more dollars at home and deliver a healthcare system we can all be proud of. If you don't believe me, go online and look up the Medicare for All savings calculator and do the math. You'll see that we'll save thousands at the household level and perhaps hundreds of billions of dollars over the next decade in what we spend here in the state of California. It's a human right, and it's going to unleash an economic energy in our state. I'm fully convinced of it.
Thank you. All right, the next question. 4 years ago, Butte County experienced California's deadliest wildfire. What needs to be done now to prevent another Camp Fire? Mr. Zink, would you start us?
Yeah, and that's a very heavy question. So we're talking about forest management, and we're talking about fire hardening communities so they can get through the fire next time. You know, CAL FIRE has been stressed for a want of having enough personnel to take on these fires right away when they occur. And so that's why I'm a supporter of Proposition 30, the Clean Air Act. It provides significant funding for CAL FIRE to retain, train, and hire new personnel, not in that order. But the work that they're going to be able to do is put out fires sooner. It'll pay for equipment they need to put those fires out, and it'll provide funds that will allow them to go out into our communities along the wildland-urban interface to do the work that needs to be done in fire hardening homes and also in helping to create safe spaces around those homes. We've got two things that we need to do here in the North State. We need to log in the forests, and we need more prescribed burns. On the prescribed burn front, you know, one of the things that we have lacked over time has been the personnel to make a dent in our forestscape. I think the top figure for the number of prescribed burn acres in the state of California in a given year is 500,000 acres. That's just not enough for a 33 million acre forestscape. We need more personnel doing that work. I believe we should create a citizens civilian work corps, perhaps for post-high school students, that we can deploy out into the forestscape, much like the California Conservation Corps, you know, who work for those three values. It's hard work, and it's low pay, and miserable living conditions, and they love it. That's a sizable workforce we could deploy, and we could pay them back with education and health benefits to boot. I think there's a there, and I'd like to explore it once elected.
Thank you. Mr. Gallagher.
Well, as I said, fuels is the biggest problem. We have an overgrowth of fuels in our forests, and it's because of a failure to do any kind of management in the forest. The killing of the logging industry in the North State, which has been devastating to our economies, but it's also made the forest a much more dangerous place in the last 40 years, because what we've seen is an overgrowth of vegetation, of dead and dying trees, of density. In some places in this forest, we have 9-foot tall piles of brush. It's unacceptable. And so we have to do something about the fuels. Now, I mentioned the funding. So I advocated successfully for a continuous appropriation. That means it has to be in the budget the next 5 years, $250 million every year. So that money is there. The problem has been implementation, and we highlighted this, and not only myself, but Capitol Public Radio highlighted this, that the Newsom administration has failed to actually put that money to work. At one point, he was claiming he did 90,000, that, you know, under his administration, they did 90,000 acres of treatment. It turned out it was closer to 17,000 acres of treatment, and that was documented. The problem is you have to go through a full CEQA process to do this work, and that can take upwards of 18 months before you even move. They were actually going to do that in Berry Creek. There was a plan to do clearing and fuel reduction around Berry Creek, but they were caught in a CEQA process. And then the fire burned through the community. It's a travesty. And it's because of these policies, again, that the Democratic majority in the Sacramento legislature continues to thwart. Again, wouldn't even hear bills. It's also about, yes, investing in our fire. I believe we need to do that as well, and make sure that we're getting on fires quickly using technology. We should be able to get on these fires, you know, immediately as soon as we see them. And with new technology, we can do that. But it's also fighting against this terrible idea of saying we should not rebuild our communities. And I've been fighting back against that, because there's those in Sacramento who say we shouldn't rebuild in Paradise. And I vehemently fight against that. Our communities are not a dangerous place to live. They've been made dangerous
Thank you.
by policy.
All right, the next question. And Mr. Gallagher, you'll be the first to answer. What policies and programs do you support to ensure the water needs of California are met now and for future generations?
Well, number one, we need to build Sites Reservoir. We need to invest in new water storage in this state, which we have not done since New Melones was built. And that was almost 50 years ago that we built a new storage facility. Since that time, the population of our state has doubled to 40 million people. And we haven't made investments in water infrastructure, despite passing a water bond in 2012 that was supposed to provide that money. Not one new piece of infrastructure has been built. Now, I've passed legislation that would expedite those projects to make them go faster using alternative delivery. I have also advocated with the Water Commission, and successfully, we got almost $1 billion allocated to building the Sites Reservoir. Where is it now? It's stuck in permitting under Gavin Newsom's administration, at the Fish and Wildlife Service, who still has not permitted the project, at the State Water Resources Control Board, who still has not permitted the project. The bureaucracy is getting in the way of building the most vital piece of infrastructure that we need in this state. There's other things that we can do as well. Desalination plants is something we should have been investing in 20 years ago, to take the reliance of Southern California off of our Northern California water. But these are the kinds of investments that we need to be making. And again, a lot of it is environmental policy, statutes, laws that have been passed out of Sacramento that have thwarted these projects. But those are the things we need to focus on. We need to protect our water rights. We need to vociferously guard our water rights in the North State. I have done that. When there's been attacks on it. Just this very year, there was a bill that was attacking our water rights, and joining with Democrats on the other side, we stopped that bill from passage. So I fight for what is right for our area each and every day. Yes, I'm passionate about it. Yes, I get out there and I'm loud. But I also find ways I never let it stop me from working across the aisle to effectively get the job done for the North State.
Thank you. Mr. Zink?
Thank you very much. Obviously, water is a very big issue. And it's one of the most complex that we have in our state right now. As I've been campaigning out and speaking with people around the district, I've learned two lessons. The first is the first lesson of water, which is scarcity. There's never enough to fully satisfy everyone. And if you look at the history of our state, that proves to be true. The second is the first lesson of the politics of water, which is to ignore the first lesson of water. Yes, we need to be able to move water to where it's needed. I look at these complex issues using a triple bottom line analysis. And these are the kinds of to provide a view of the kinds of solutions that are going to work for the state, not just for the some, but for the many. The first bottom line, of course, is we got to keep our farmers, our businesses in business, running a business, surviving into the future, so that they've got a way, if not to make a killing, to make a living, something they can be proud of. The second, we need a bottom line for our communities. Water is a shared resource. Our communities will continue to grow. We need to secure safe drinking water for our communities in the future. And the third bottom line is the environmental. Our natural systems, after all, are what brought us to this beautiful state. And if we seriously deplete them, we do ourselves a grave disservice, and no solution can last that leaves out the environmental. We need to hit all three to find good solutions that work. Look, I'm not finished in my analysis of the Sites Reservoir, but right now I have grave concerns. The plan is to cull water from the Sacramento River during high flow events, and I'm worried that the whole situation is going to deteriorate and we'll continue to deliver less water down to the Delta, which is going to cause an environmental impact that we're going to have to mediate with billions of dollars of new investment down there. So those are my thoughts on water. Thank you.
Thank you.
I see the stop sign.
So obedient. The next question is, describe the proposals you support to alleviate the shortage of affordable housing for middle and low income families. And Mr. Zink, you will be the first to answer.
Well, I'm glad to have seen the good news on the passage of two bills that I believe our assemblyman voted for last week, and not passage, but the signing into law of the two bills, SB 6 and AB 2011. It's going to free up so much space in rural communities in the North State, and I think it's going to be impactful for us. So I'm very glad for those kinds of things. You know, the situation that we're in the North State with a lack of affordable housing has been decades in the making. We've just seriously underinvested in building housing that folks that are struggling to get by can afford to live in. And the cost of living has just risen in the state year after year after year. So when we look at housing solutions, I think it's important for us to deal with the most immediate crises first. Last time I looked at the statistics, it looks like there are 20% of the folks that are living on the streets in Chico are former neighbors of mine from Paradise. They deserve quality housing to live in now. Other nations are able to look after their communities post-catastrophe for the long term, for as long as the resource of housing is needed. Why can't we? I think we can. We just have to build those affordable housing options. But where I'm looking into right now is the question of where do we go from there? Once we house people in affordable housing, what about their need to get some traction in their economic lives? How about figuring out a path toward building equity? It only makes sense. If you don't want somebody to feel permanently stuck in their economic life, then you need to give them a way to get some traction towards something better. That's what equity in a home can do. And so that's an element that I want to work on. Yes, where we can speed the permitting of new housing developments, we should do it. Yes, where there are new developments going in, we should hold local communities to account to make sure there's enough allocated to serve the needs of their local population.
Thank you. Mr. Gallagher?
Well, let me start by talking about what I have done on this front. First of all, we passed AB 430 in the aftermath of the Camp Fire that gave seven northern Sacramento Valley cities the ability to get a CEQA streamline, a CEQA exemption to build housing as long as it's zoned, it's in the zoning plan and their general plan for building housing in those areas. So that has been an effective tool that is out there. We've successfully got CDBG disaster funds that were, that gave greater allocation to areas that had gone through wildfires. And that has resulted in affordable housing projects that were built in Oroville and in Paradise. I'm very proud of that work. The biggest thing we need to do is remove the impediments. So much of we need to build more housing. Everybody is, pointed out, expert after expert has pointed out, we need 300,000 new units a year in California. We've barely been building 100,000. And one of the biggest problems is CEQA, California Environmental Quality Act, the time it takes, the permitting, the frivolous lawsuits that get brought against much needed affordable housing and market rate housing projects. Just here in Chico, I was able to get record funding for the Bruce Road widening that was going to bring online 300 new units of affordable housing. It was that was immediately sued by the same person that always sues these projects locally, and it's holding up more affordable housing being built. Now, luckily, some of that is moving forward. At Merriam Park, we're seeing that going forward. I've been proud to work with them, and remove some of the impediments that they've seen, both at the state and federal level. But I want to continue that work. And also we need to remove, there's this myriad that revolves around this maze around tax credits that help build affordable housing. We need to streamline that process, make it much more easier for affordable housing builders.
Thank you. Now the next question. Do you support Proposition 1 on the November ballot, which would change the California Constitution to say that the state cannot deny or interfere with a person's reproductive choice? Please explain your answer. Mr. Gallagher?
No, I oppose Prop 1. I am, prayerfully pro-life. And that's my feeling. And I think that, this law has actually no restrictions whatsoever on late-term abortions, and also could very well allow for publicly funded, taxpayer-funded abortions at even in late term. I think that's a radical proposal, and that's why I oppose it.
Thank you. Mr. Zink?
I support Proposition 1. I don't know how a country that cherishes freedom of religion and equality under the law both can do otherwise. It's time for us to make sure it's fixed in the firmament of our state that a woman has a right to choose, that people have the right when or if they will reproduce. I think it's an important challenge, but I want to say it's not a position that I come to easily. Through long study and lots of searching through the issues and trying to find alternatives, I've tried on a lot of thoughts. And what I've come down to on the subject of reproductive freedom is that to force the unwanted on the unwilling is morally repugnant. And I think it's important for us to state clearly in our law, and yes, in our Constitution, that individuals have a choice over whether and when to reproduce. And so that's why I support Proposition 1, and I hope those who are listening with me will as well.
Thank you. Okay, the next question. Mr. Zink, you'll be the first to answer. To reach a goal of carbon neutrality by 2045, what policies or legislation do you support? Please be specific.
Yeah, thank you. Well, right now, I'm glad to say that we've got something on the ballot that's going to help. You know, the two greatest drivers of greenhouse gas emissions here in California come from transportation and from wildfires. And Prop 30 does something to help with both. It establishes a separate fund from the general fund that'll be filled with taxes, not on most of the folks that are listening to this call, but to the wealthiest among us. It'll tax every dollar they make above $2 million a year. So if you make $2,001 in a given year, you'll spend something less than 2 cents in tax on that dollar. We expect to see revenues that will stretch between $1.5 to $3 billion a year there. 35% of the revenue will be allocated toward building out an electric charging infrastructure. And that will prefer low-income and middle-income communities and rural communities as well. It's going to be just as plentiful as gas stations. And then 45% will go to help smooth the transition, ease the transition for Californians into a zero emissions producing vehicle, most likely electric. 20% goes to CAL FIRE, and I think I mentioned it earlier, to help build out their ability to hire, train, and retain personnel so that they can do the hard work of putting out fires quickly in the wildland-urban interface. It'll give them new equipment, and it'll set them loose on communities along our forests where they need help fire hardening and making their grounds safe so they can withstand the fire next time. So I think that's a powerful help, and we need to look for additional incentives to help Californians bring down our carbon emissions so that our future generations can stay safe. There will always be room for petroleum in our economy. We're not going to do away with that entirely. Our energy security depends on having that chunk, but we can certainly lower it quite a bit.
Thank you. Mr. Gallagher?
Well, before I get into what I think we should do, let me talk about what we've done wrong. The state of California and the Democratic supermajority, Gavin Newsom, Jerry Brown before him, their focus to reach carbon neutrality, has been to increase your costs dramatically by the policies they pass when it comes to utility power, which has raised your cost of living, your utility bills 60% higher than any other state in the nation. It has meant that you can't even drive the car that you want to drive now, and that came about by an executive order, not by any legislation that was passed. Also something that should be extremely concerning, that one man, who's not a legislator, by the way, has now come down with these edicts that are going to say what kind of car you can drive. The California Air Resources Board has taken away people's livelihoods. People rely on trucks in the North State. We have a very vibrant trucking industry. Their livelihoods have been taken away. They've been told you can no longer use that truck that you were expecting to use for the next 10, 15 years. You have to replace it at a very high cost and a very damaging to their businesses. AB5 has also had a huge impact on that with the independent contractors. So what I prefer is going forward and doing things that actually reduce carbon emissions and don't have the devastating impact on costs. The number one thing we can do is wildfire prevention, is fuel reduction. I'm not saying this myself. The Legislative Analyst Office said that the fuel reduction, the vegetation management we do in the forest is the most cost-effective way to reduce carbon emissions, because healthy forests are a carbon sink, and it stops these catastrophic wildfires that a study just found obliterated the last 18 years of carbon gains we made in California. The 2020 wildfire did that because we haven't done the job in our forests. So if you really care about climate change and reaching carbon neutrality, we better start getting to work on that.
Thank you. Mr. Gallagher, you'll be the first to answer this question. The Air Resources Board has mandated that new California vehicles be emission-free by 2035. What would be your preferred transition plan over the next 13 years?
Well, not only have they said that about cars, they are now saying that about trucks. And one of the most devastating things of Gavin Newsom's executive order that he passed, by the way, in October of 2020, claiming a climate emergency, he mandated by executive order that we do, by 2035, no new cars can be sold that are not EV. And then most devastatingly, he said all off-road equipment must be zero emission by 2040. That's not possible. In our farming communities, in our trucking industries, we don't even have vehicles that could meet a zero emission standard at this day and age. And yet we're going to commit to doing that. We don't even have the infrastructure, the charging infrastructure throughout this state, that if you had an electric vehicle or an electric truck, by the way, they're $20,000 more cost than a truck that you would buy today. I'm sorry, man, but for the hardworking people of this district to just say, sorry, we're going to force you to go to this. We're not going to provide you any funding. And by the way, Prop 30 is going to help big corporations like Uber and Lyft convert their fleets over, and big businesses convert their fleets, but it's not helping small businesses. It's not helping the small trucker, and what the last thing we need in this state is a new tax. This state's had $100 billion surplus last year. I think they have taxed us quite enough. But what would I favor? How about incentives? Having incentives towards, and make those incentives available not to the rich, which is what this state has done. The incentive that's available to purchase an electric vehicle has demonstratively been used by the very wealthy in this state, not by the middle class, not by the lower income. And so we need to have incentives rather than mandates that force people to buy a certain vehicle at very high cost and take away their livelihood. It's wrong.
Thank you, Mr. Zink.
Well, generally speaking, I always prefer free market initiatives. I love how the free market works. It solves so many problems. There's a lot of wisdom in going at the pace that the free market can travel. But the free market is more or less ignorant of what's coming in the future when it comes to climate change. We're in a moment where we need to marshal our resources in a different way. And that's why I do believe that market incentives ought to be provided to help markets move more quickly towards solutions that are going to get us to where we need to go. And by the way, climate change is barreling down on us like a speeding freight train. There's nothing we're going to do to slow it unless we make sure that we bring down our greenhouse gas emissions and stop the warming of the planet. So I see a role for the government in providing those market incentives. By the way, the Biden administration nationally has done a great job of passing new legislation that's going to help working families in America make that very same transition. So he and Governor Gavin Newsom are working in sync, really, to help families make the move. Proposition 30, again, is a smart move. It's not a giveaway to Lyft or Uber any more than it is to local fleets of counties and cities where there are many vehicles that they have to replace on an ongoing basis. And, I have a friend That friend is me, who leased an electric vehicle recently. And I received great incentives from the government to help out. $7,500 kickback from the federal government, $1,500 back from the state of California. It really lowered the cost of my lease. And I've done the math. I'm really only spending $300 a month by comparison to my old gas guzzler. So I think it's a smart move for Californians. We can take it on right now.
Thank you. All right, the next question. What programs or strategies do you propose to meet the educational needs of young, low-income students? Mr. Zink will be the first to answer.
Well, I've talked with a lot of folks around the district about the need to do better in education. And among those I've spoken with are professionals in early childhood education. It's clear to me that we need to value those who work with very young preschool children as much as we do the teachers that work in the classes. They need good pay. They need comparable benefits. We need to bring the respect to that forefront that it deserves so that we can incentivize more to get into the field. It's everyone knows, and the studies have shown it, that what we do in early childhood can make a big difference in the academic path of the individual as they navigate our school system. That's where success can begin, right at the very beginning. I also think that we need to make sure that our teachers out there, and by the way, Lori, my sweetheart of 41 years, has taught in the classroom for 30 years. And so she would not let me off the hook without saying that we need to prepare our teachers for success in the classroom and support them with better pay and more resources in the classroom. So many just dip into their own pockets to pay for making the environment of the classroom one that's more conducive to students to learn in. They shouldn't be doing that on their own. Many good teachers do. We need to make sure that we're supporting them financially in the ways that are going to add to success in the classroom.
Thank you. Mr. Gallagher?
Well, I think the theme of this would be that we need to stop doing the same thing and expecting different results. I mean, when you look across this state and the test scores show it, our kids are reading below grade level. They're not at the math level that they should be. And I'll go back to, I believe it was the Vergara case, where minority students in classrooms, from across the state brought a lawsuit against the state of California, saying that they had been stuck in these in terrible schools and no ability to get out of them. And they challenged, the tenure rules that are in place that kept bad teachers in their classroom. And they targeted the fact that they could not move to another school district. That they were forced to continue to go to school district where their parents, both them and their parents, saw that they were not getting the education that they deserve. Now that was brought by low-income minority students who said this is not working. Now, since that time, this state legislature has done nothing to address those reforms that those students brought and said these are the things that need to happen. I believe in charter schools that have done a tremendous job in closing the achievement gap. But in Sacramento, the powers that be continually thwart the charter schools and try to shut them down, quite frankly, try to take away their funding. And that has been very frustrating. And I have worked with charter schools throughout this district who have done a tremendous job. Traditional public schools do a great job too, but they need to have the reforms necessary to break out of the traditional system. And you know what? Money should follow the kid. Absolutely. Wherever a kid and his parents decide is the best place for him or her to get an education, money should follow them. If they decide to go to a charter school, if they decide to go to a different traditional public school in a different district, the money should follow them. That is the free market. And I think it would work much better than what we're doing right now.
Thank you. Mr. Gallagher, you'll be the first to answer. As an elected official of District 3, how do you intend to reach out to your constituents, be accessible, and listen to their concerns?
And well, let me finish up a little bit on education, and then I'll go into that. The other thing is our kids were kept out of school for far too long. During COVID-19, it became very clear that we could send our kids back to school in person safely. All the science showed that. It showed that there was not the impacts to our children. They could go back safely. And Gavin Newsom and the supermajority Democrats kept them out of school for months on end, kept them on Zoom school, all the while his kids were going to private school and getting an in-person education, by the way. That's the other thing that I can't stand is the hypocrisy that I see every day in that Capitol. And that's why I fight so hard against it. And now we're seeing the results. 60% of our kids in California are behind reading level now. And it is because of this learning loss. We need to continue to fight for that. How do I make myself accessible? My office is always open. It's accessible. My staff is always reaching out and taking calls from constituents. I have an open door. When people want to meet with me, I get it out to every part of this district regularly. I have town halls because I want to hear from my constituents. I want to know what their ideas are. We've taken ideas from constituents and turned them into legislation. But most of all, I think what we've done is not necessarily government. It's been working side by side with stakeholders, with nonprofits, with community leaders, trying to find those different things that can help us build back and make us stronger, that we can find solutions to problems. And I've been very proud of that work. During the EDD crisis, which was a travesty, that we put all these people out of work, and then we couldn't get them their EDD, unemployment benefits. That we worked so tirelessly to make sure that people got those benefits that they deserved. And the letters that I got from constituents were just overwhelming to me. And my staff worked very hard to make sure that was okay. Those are the kinds of things that we can do and will continue to do as your assemblyman.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Zink.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks. I'm both very humbled and very proud of the support that I've received from my local community in this run for elective office. If you go to my website, zinkforassembly.com, and you click on the endorsements page and scroll down a little bit, you'll see there are dozens of endorsements from members of the community here that are just telling you who they've experienced me to be over time. And one of the themes that comes out the most there is that I listen. Another is that I work collaboratively to get things done, and they can trust me to put in the effort. That's who I am as a person. And so as I've been campaigning, one of the priorities I've had is to reach out to every elected official in our district and to interview them about what the state of California is doing or not doing that helps or harms their community. What would they like to see the state stop doing or keep doing or start doing that would really make a difference? And what are their priority projects and programs that they'd like to see supported in the future? And those are the same questions that I've been asking out on the campaign trail and will continue to ask in my tenure in office. Look, the best listening can be done meeting with people in person, yes, but we have this wonderful technology, Zoom. It doesn't require much travel. We can hold town halls on Zoom on a more frequent basis, and we can find ways to bring in the listening that we need in order to address the priorities of our communities right now. So I'm going to take full advantage of that technology. And just one more thing on education. I don't know how our elected officials began to doubt the institutions of our government and their expertise, but Butte County and the state of California called an emergency health crisis, and they managed that crisis to the best of their ability. And for our elected officials to second guess the leadership of those officials is just distressing to me. I know too many teachers who feared for their health in making a too early return to the classroom. I think they made the right call.
Thank you. We have time for one more question. Gun control. What would your position be on gun control, since it's been very much a subject for discussion and debate? And Mr. Zink, you would be the first to answer.
Well, thank you. I have been distinguished as a gun sense candidate by Moms Demand Action, that group that grew up after Sandy Hook. In the state of California, we have among the most robust gun regulations in the country. And the result of that is that we have among the lowest death rates by gun violence in the country. It's not perfect, we've got a ways to go, but it looks to me like those regulations are having a desired effect. Care to guess which state in the country has the lowest death by gun? Hawaii. Hawaii has tough regulations and they have no neighbors. Just try getting a gun that doesn't belong in Hawaii into Hawaii. It doesn't work so well. So I look at California and I think, well, we need to work with our neighbors a little more robustly. As I've been listening out on the campaign trail, folks have been telling me, yeah, but David, there are some gun law regulations that don't make sense. And they tell me what it is that doesn't make sense to them. And I'm listening to them. Hey, any regulation that doesn't make sense, that isn't effective toward what it's meant to be effective toward, I think we need to revisit that, figure out how to either sharpen it up or do away with it. So yes, I will support the legislation and the gun regulations that we have on the books right now because they're working, and I don't want to undo that good work. But at the same time, I know there are gun owners out there that are looking for something better, more sensible in our regulations. Often people ask me about a specific gun, the AR-15, and that one piece of equipment. Here's my view on that. A well-regulated militia being necessary for the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. If you want to join a militia and get arms that you can go to war with, please do get that training and stay in the militia, and you can keep your gun. When you're done, move on without it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Gallagher.
Too often when I hear the word gun control, what it really means is going after legal, law-abiding citizens and infringing upon their gun rights. People who have long, safely operated firearms for whatever reason that they wanted to, for hunting purposes, for self-protection, for recreation. And so the laws that we see come out of Sacramento tend to go after those people and to make it harder for them to, either purchase a firearm or make it harder for them to get a CCW. We saw that again this year in the legislature, an attempt to, really stall the ability to get a CCW. But what there's not enough of, and what I think the real problem is crime control, is criminals who are out on our streets with illegal guns and using them. And despite all of these laws that have been passed in California, you can cite all the stats you want, but I'll just say this: San Bernardino, Rancho Tehama, Sacramento. We've seen these mass shootings. Guess who they're carried out by? Criminals, terrorists, who shouldn't have guns in the first place, and yet are still getting them. And Rob Bonta, the current Attorney General, is tasked with going after those folks. There's a program called APPS, and they're supposed to go after prohibited persons, felons, others who are not supposed to have firearms, and disarm them. They've failed to do that. The backlog is still over 20,000 individuals throughout the state. Oroville, people riding on a bus, and a gentleman who is a known criminal who'd been in and out of jail, who should have never been out, who had just gotten done abusing his girlfriend in Redding, gets on a bus and shoots people up with an illegal gun he wasn't supposed to have on the bus. Sacramento, where a guy who was supposed to be in jail for 10 years gets out in 4 under Democratic policies and goes and uses an illegal gun to kill 4 people. That's the problem, and we need to focus on that.
Thank you. Now we're going to give you each 2 minutes for a closing statement. And Mr. Gallagher, you'll go first.
Well, it's been great to be with you tonight. I mean, I think that these forums are critical, because you get to hear, from the candidates, you get to hear their ideas. And clearly, Mr. Zink seems like a great gentleman. We haven't had a chance to talk a whole lot. I think this is the first night that we've actually been able to interact. But you've gotten to see from both of us, I think we're both upstanding individuals who love our communities, and that want to see, better things for our families and for our communities. But you also can see very clearly that we have 2 very different views of how to bring that about, that we have different ideas. of how to bring that about. And that's what this is all about, is you get to look at both of our ideas. I would point out that I think many of those ideas are what the Democrats have done in power in California for the past 20 years. And we can see the results. We have an exploding homelessness population. The problem has only gotten worse despite 17 billion of your taxpayer dollars. You saw people promoting single payer healthcare. That would cost $400 billion here in California. That is twice our state budget. It would be a monumental tax increase at a time when people can least afford it. Public safety is a travesty. We're seeing more and more, not only violent crimes are spiking everywhere, but the thefts, the businesses that are ravaged by people who have no accountability for theft anymore. And then we see the rising cost of living. California has become unaffordable, and it is because of these policies that have been passed by the supermajority Democrats in Sacramento. Now, look, I don't think that most of the Democrats that live in my district, who have told me time and time again they support what I'm doing and like what I'm doing, they don't support those policies either, because they're not good for California, and they're not leading to a greater quality of life. And that is why I'm going to continue to fight against them and fight for you.
Thank you, Mr. Gallagher. Mr. Zink?
Well, once again, I want to thank the League of Women Voters for running a fine forum. The work you do is so important, and I feel privileged to be here with you. So once again, thank you.
Thank you.
And likewise, I want to offer my respect and appreciation for Mr. Gallagher for coming tonight. It's been good to meet you. Perhaps at some point we can meet in person and do something social together. Would be fun.
Yeah.
You know, what got me to run was 2016, one of the most divisive years in American history in my adulthood. Seeing neighbors uncomfortable with each other, friends unfriending each other, family members not talking to each other any longer. The grievance that was driving us apart was powerful. And I thought in my heart, on a walk with my wife one day, what's becoming of our country? What's going to happen to us? And so I turned to my sweetheart and I said, sweetie, should I run for public office? And she didn't laugh. We kept walking and talking. And now I'm here. And the reason I'm here is I'm a community organizer. It's been my habit to bring people together. It's been my habit to listen and lean in with curiosity and respect. I believe in having a good fight. I believe in taking on strong challenges with folks with whom we disagree, but I see the fight as necessary for kicking out bad ideas. I don't come at them with an ideological point of view. I'm going to learn something in the process. Hyperpartisanship, saying the Democrats are the ones that are ruining things, Republicans are the ones that are ruining things, that's sending us down the wrong path. No, it's individuals that we elect to serve our communities that are doing the right things and helping us win by passing legislation that is strong and can last. And that's my pledge to you. I'm running as an independent-minded Democrat, and I respectfully request your vote this election season.
Thank you both very much. All right, so we are going to have a brief pause. We want to thank you again for being available to us, and we hope everybody goes out and votes because now we all know more about each other, and so we're going to vote with our eyes open, and we'll know what we're voting for. So thank you very much. You all have a brief pause, and then we will begin with our second forum with Mr. LaMalfa and Mr. Steiner.
Thank you.
Thank you.